The wind howled through the endless white mountains. Snowflakes flew like sharp little blades, biting into skin and freezing every breath. Somewhere deep in that icy land, a small figure moved slowly through the storm. She was an alien woman. Skin a soft purple blue and long silver hair covered in ice. In her arms, she held something far more precious than her life, a baby. The child was quiet. She dropped to her knees in the thick snow, holding the baby close to her chest, wrapping it in her thin, torn cloak. The child was shaking, his skin turning pale. His breath was weak and slow. "No, please," she whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Stay with me, ... She looked around, nothing but snow. No shelter, no fire, no help. Her people had cast her out 2 nights ago. They said her child was cursed, too human, too different. Her cries for mercy were ignored. Now, she was alone, starving, and afraid. But the worst fear wasn't for herself, it was for her baby. She pulled the child tighter and began to hum. Her voice was weak, but the song was soft and loving, a lullaby from her homeworld. A song she used to sing when the baby smiled, back when they had food and warmth. And hope, now the lullaby felt like a goodbye. She closed her eyes and rocked slowly in the snow. The storm screamed louder, as if nature itself wanted to silence. She kept singing anyway. Each word was filled with pain. Each note was a prayer. She kissed the child's forehead. The cold burned her lips then. She heard it. A sound faint. Crunch, 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 crunch. Footsteps, her body tensed. Her ears twitched. She turned her head sharply, eyes wide. Something was moving through the storm. She wrapped herself tighter around her child, her heart pounding. Was it an animal? A soldier? A tribe hunter coming back to finish the job? No. The shape became clearer. A tall figure, 2 legs, heavy boots, dark clothing, a scarf wrapped around the face. The being walked slowly through the storm, arms raised, to shield against the snow. A human, she gasped and quickly backed away in the snow. Trying to shield her child, the human saw her and stopped. Slowly, he raised both hands, no weapons, no threat. His eyes, barely visible through his snow-covered scarf, showed surprise. And something else. Compassion. The alien mother was shivering badly. Her lips turned blue. Her child gave a weak, soft sound, barely a whimper. She looked at the human, unsure what to do. He didn't speak. Instead, he opened his backpack and pulled out a heat blanket, wrapping it around them gently. She flinched at first, but didn't resist. Then he took off his coat and placed it over them both. The warmth was like magic. Tears rolled from her eyes again, but this time not just from pain. The human knelt beside her, took out a small emergency heater, and lit it. It gave off a soft orange glow, and she leaned toward it. Holding the baby over the warmth, the child moved. A little cough. A tiny breath. The alien mother let out a choked sound that was half laughter, half sobbing. The human handed her a water flask. She took a small sip, then let the baby have some. The child opened his eyes just a little. But it was enough. He was alive. The human didn't say a word. He just watched them. The mother finally whispered, "Why?" The man pulled down his scarf and spoke for the first time. His voice calm and gentle. No one should die alone in the snow. She stared at him, not understanding all the words, but she understood his heart. The storm still raged, but inside, that tiny circle of warmth, a mother, a child, and a human stranger had created something stronger than the cold. Hope. The fire cracked softly, giving off a weak but steady heat. The snowstorm still screamed outside, but inside the small cave, it was quiet now. The alien mother sat close to the glowing heater, her arms wrapped tightly around her child. The little one was breathing again, slow but steady. And next to them sat the human. He had brought her into the cave after wrapping them both in warmth. She had barely been able to walk. Her legs had turned numb in the storm. But he had lifted her like she weighed nothing, never saying a word, only moving quickly to save them. Now she watched him with cautious eyes. Who was this human? Why did he care? He was tall, with tired blue eyes and a short beard. His clothing was thick and worn, covered in snow and frost. A strange metal badge hung around his neck. It looked old. Military? Maybe once. But now he looked like a wanderer, lost like her. He opened a food pouch, tore it, and handed her a warm energy bar. She hesitated. She had been taught humans were dangerous, selfish, violent. But this one had offered fire, warmth, and now food. She took it with shaking hands. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded but didn't speak. The child stirred in her arms. Its small fingers reached for the bar, and the mother smiled softly. For the first time in days, she broke a piece and placed it gently in the baby's mouth. The human watched them closely. Not with suspicion, with wonder, she finally spoke again. "My name is Arilla," she said slowly, pressing her hand to her chest. The man blinked, then pointed at himself. "David," he replied. "David," she repeated slowly. He smiled. Just a little. The wind howled louder for a moment, shaking snow loose from the rocks. Arilla flinched, curling around her child protectively. David stood and checked the cave entrance. He pulled a thermal tarp across it, blocking the wind. Then he returned and sat, looking at her again, her eyes lowered. She was ashamed, not just because of the cold or her weakness, but because she had nothing left. No home, no pride. Just a child she had nearly lost. "Why you? Help me," she asked softly. David didn't answer right away. He looked at the fire, as if searching for the right words. Then he said, "Because someone once saved me." She didn't fully understand, but she felt the meaning. His eyes held pain. Maybe he, too, had known loss. Maybe he was running from something too. Arilla slowly began to relax, not fully, but enough to breathe without fear. She looked at her child, who now rested peacefully in her lap. "His name is Alim," she whispered. "Born during war. My people say he's cursed." David looked confused. "Why?" Arilla's voice cracked. "Because he looks human." David glanced at the baby. A pale skin, light hair, a round face. Yes, she was right. The child looked like him, like a human. "He is strong," she added, her voice firming. "He is not cursed. He is." David nodded. "I believe you." That was the first time anyone had said that to her. She blinked fast, trying to hide the tears. Outside, the storm was slowly quieting, but inside that cave, something else was beginning. Not a storm, something softer, a bond, a silent understanding between two beings from different worlds, who now shared the same pain, the same fear, and maybe the same hope. David reached into his pack and took out a small blanket. He gently laid it over the child. Rilla watched his every move, her heart racing, but she didn't stop him. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you, David." He looked up, meeting her eyes again. "No one should freeze alone," he said. She held her child closer and nodded. Then she added quietly, "Not anymore." The fire continued to burn low and steady, and for the first time in many nights, Arilla closed her eyes, not from fear, but from peace. The human didn't leave. He stayed awake beside her, watching the cave's entrance, protecting the child that wasn't his, not yet. When Arilla woke, the world had changed. The storm outside had calmed. The snow no longer screamed like a monster. Instead, soft flakes drifted down like feathers from the sky. Inside the cave, the fire had turned into warm orange embers. Anew. Silence had settled, not cold and empty, but quiet and safe. Her arms tightened around Elam. He was still breathing, still alive. His cheeks had some color now. His little fingers were curled gently near his mouth. She kissed the top of his head, and then she looked up. David the human was still there, sitting near the cave's edge, his back to her. He hadn't slept. His coat was wrapped around him tightly, and steam rose from a hot metal cup in his hands. He had kept the fire going. He had kept them warm. He had kept watch all night. Why? That. Questions still filled her mind like smoke. She sat up slowly. Her body ached. Her toes stung with pain. Her arms were stiff from holding a limb for too long. But she didn't complain. Pain meant she was still alive. "Morning," David said quietly, without turning. His voice was calm, steady. Arilla blinked. "Good morning." She wasn't used to greetings or kindness. David turned around and offered her a second cup of prop. Heated liquid simple nutrient tea from his rations. She took it with both hands. It warmed her fingers as she sipped. The taste was plain, but it filled her with comfort. He finally sat across from her. "Your boy's strong," he said, nodding. "At Elam, yes," she whispered. "He is." For a moment, silence filled the space between them again. But it wasn't awkward, just peaceful. Then David pointed to the fire and asked, "How long were you out there?" Irilla looked down. 2 days, maybe more." His eyes widened. "Slightly. Alone." "My people left me," she said softly. They saw Elam's face. Said he was not one of us. Said I had broken the blood. David frowned. "Todd, because he looks like a human." She nodded. He didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "That's not his fault. Or yours." She looked at him carefully. Her people said humans were selfish, cold, violent, but this man had given his food, fire, and shelter without asking for anything in return. "You are not like the stories," she said. David chuckled quietly. "You're not like the stories either." That made her smile. Just a little. It felt strange to smile. David took a breath and looked at her again. "I was part of a military rescue unit. Years ago, we helped planets after battles. I saw a lot of mothers like you, holding children, waiting to be saved." Arilla lowered her head. "Did anyone save them?" "Sometimes," he answered. "Not always." Her heart ached at the answer, but the honesty made her trust him even more. "Why are you here?" she asked. David stared into the fire. "I lost people. I came to this region to forget. I didn't expect to find anyone. You found us," she said. He looked up and met her eyes. "Yes," he said softly. "I did." Elam shifted in her arms, letting out a soft sound. Irilla rocked him gently, humming the lullaby from the night before. This time, her voice was stronger. Not a goodbye, just a song. David listened quietly. "That's beautiful," he said. "It is a mother's song," she explained, sung during cold nights. "He means, sleep, and I will carry you home." He nodded slowly. "Maybe I can help you find a home." Her heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I have a shelter," he said. "Not far from here. Warm, safe, with food. If you want, I can take you both there." Her eyes filled with tears. No one had offered her safety before no one had offered her a home. She looked at Elam, who blinked sleepily, and then back at the human. "You would do this? For strangers?" David smiled. "You're not strangers anymore." She held his gaze for a long time. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Then we go." she whispered. Together. Outside, the wind had stilled. The white sky was brighter. Now, and deep inside the frozen mountains where nothing was supposed to grow, something small and powerful had started to bloom. Trust the journey too. David's shelter was slow and silent. Snow crunched softly under their boots as they moved through the pale white forest. The sky above had turned soft gray, and the storm had fully passed. Tall, frozen trees stood like silent giants watching their steps. Arilla walked close beside David, Ilum bundled tightly in her arms, his little eyes fluttering open now and then. David walked carefully ahead, watching every step. He made sure Arilla didn't fall. Every time she slowed down, he waited without complaint. No one had ever done that for her. They reached a small ridge, and David pointed toward the valley below. There, almost hidden by rock and snow, was a metal structure half buried, a survival shelter from the old wars. There it is, David said. Home. Arilla blinked, unsure what to expect. But the moment they stepped inside, warmth touched her skin like sunlight. He activated a heater unit, and the shelter lights flickered on, glowing soft and yellow. There was a cot, clean water, food packs, and even old clothes. Sit, David said gently. Rest. I'll heat something. Arilla obeyed. Her legs shook as she sat. She laid Aleem on the cot and covered him in fresh blankets David handed her. The child's skin already looked better. Color had returned to his cheeks for the first time in many nights. She didn't feel fear when she closed her eyes. She felt safe. After some time, David placed a steaming bowl of soup in her hands. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. Warm. Food. Real food. Her heart wanted to cry again. He sat across from her with his own bowl. She looked at him for a long time. Why are you alone, David? She asked softly. He didn't answer at first. Then he placed the bowl down and stared. At the heater, I used to have a team, he said. A rescue unit. We helped people during border wars, human and alien. What happened? She asked. He sighed. One mission. Everything went wrong. We saved a child, but lost the team. They were like brothers and sisters to me. I'm sorry, she said. He nodded. I couldn't stay on Earth after that. Too many ghosts. I came here, far from everything. I thought I'd be alone forever. She touched her chest. I understand. David looked up. Arilla's eyes were distant. Now, I was a healer among my people, she began, voice slow and soft. Respected. Then I became pregnant. Everyone was happy. But when Ilum was born, they saw. He looked too human, too soft. His eyes, his hair. David glanced toward the child sleeping peacefully. My people said I had been with a human. She continued, shame in her tone. But I hadn't. No one understood. They called my son a shame, curse. They told me to leave, or they would take him. David's eyes darkened. They would have hurt the baby. She nodded. So I ran. Into the mountains. I thought I could survive. But the cold, it was too much. He clenched his fists. I found you just in time, he said. Yes, she whispered, eyes filling. You did. The heater hummed gently beside them. For a while, neither spoke. Just the sound of their breathing and the quiet rhythm of a child sleeping. Finally, David broke the silence. Your people were wrong, he said firmly. That boy is a miracle, not a curse. Arilla looked at him. I think so too. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I don't know what brought me to that snowfield. Maybe I was just walking without direction. But now I think. Maybe I was meant to find you. She smiled softly. Maybe the cold had a reason. They shared a quiet look, deep, filled with things neither could explain. Then suddenly knock dash knock, both. Froze. It wasn't a knock on the door. It was outside. Something moving. Stepping. Crunching. David stood up slowly. Grabbed his small blaster from the wall. Arilla rushed to the cot and shielded her son. Outside, footsteps, not one. Several. David gave her a sharp look. Stay quiet. She nodded and hugged a limb tightly. David moved to the door, pressed his ear close, and then he heard its voices. Alien voices. Her people. They had found them. David's hand tightened around his blaster. Outside the metal shelter, heavy footsteps echoed in the snow. They were not random. Not wildlife. These were trained, deliberate steps, and they were getting closer. Arilla crouched near the cot, covering her child with her body. Her eyes were wide, heart pounding inside her chest. She knew that rhythm, the pattern of marching feet. She had heard it the night they forced her out. They've come, she whispered, her voice shaking. They tracked us. David turned to her, speaking low but calm. Stay behind the bed. Don't move unless I say. She nodded, pulling Elim close. The baby stirred but did not cry. David stepped closer to the door, listening. A voice rang. Out, muffled by snow, but clear in tone. Return the woman and the child, or die, human. David's jaw clenched. He pressed a button to open the speaker outside. They're with me, he said firmly. They're safe. Go home. There was a pause. Then came cruel laughter. You protect a traitor and her cursed child. You must be even dumber than you look, human. David turned off the speaker and looked back at Arilla. How many will they send? She swallowed hard. Not many. Maybe 4, but armed, and they won't stop. David nodded. Then neither will I. He turned off the internal lights, bathing the shelter in dim red. He moved quietly, setting up a small shock mine near the entrance. You know how to fight, Arilla asked, watching him in disbelief. I know how to survive, David said, and protect the ones who can't. Her heart ached at those words. Not even her own people had done that outside. The voices grew louder, then dash boom. The shock mine exploded as someone stepped too close. A flash of light, screams. David moved. Fast, he didn't shoot to kill, just to disarm. 2 blasts from his blaster knocked down the first attacker before they could react. Arilla gasped as she heard one of the attackers cry out in pain. The others shouted in anger. You dare shoot one of us, human. David's voice was sharp. Leave. Now, or the next one won't be a warning. Silence. Then the voice replied. You think you can protect her forever? She betrayed her kind. We'll never stop hunting that freak child. David's expression darkened. His voice dropped low. Then you'll learn what it means to hunt the wrong species. He opened the door just a crack and fired again, hitting the snow near the second attacker's feet, forcing them to jump back. Panic began to spread. These weren't hardened warriors. They were bullies used to obedience. Now they were facing a trained human who didn't flinch. One of the attackers turned and ran. The others hesitated, then cursed loudly and retreated into the woods. Dragging their injured with them, David closed. The door-taut silence returned. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Arilla stepped out from the shadows, her eyes locked on him. You could have killed them. I could have, David said quietly, but I didn't. Why? He looked at her. Because I'm not like them. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear, but from something deeper. Trust, gratitude. She walked over and stood beside him. She was shaking not from the cold, but from the weight of everything. He reached out, gently touching her arm. They won't be back tonight, he said, but we need to move soon. They know where we are now. Arilla nodded. We will go, but thank you. Okay. David smiled just a little. You don't have to thank me, just doing what should have been done a long time ago. She looked down at her child. Elim was sleeping again, unaware of the danger. He doesn't know you've saved him twice now, she said softly. He doesn't need to know, David replied, only that he's safe. Outside, snow began to fall again, but gently, like a blanket. The danger had passed, for now, but something had changed inside Arilla. For so long she believed the cold world was full of cruelty. But now she had seen a fire strong enough to fight the cold, and that fire was human. The morning after the attack, the snow was still falling soft, silent, and endless. David stood just outside the shelter, his coat pulled tight, watching the horizon. His boots sank into the fresh snow, leaving deep prints behind him. His blaster was still strapped across his chest, just in case. The air was cold, but calm. Inside the shelter, Arilla carefully folded the blankets around Elim, who now slept more peacefully than ever before. His skin looked warm. His breathing was strong. His little fingers twitched in his dreams. He was safe. She stepped out quietly, her boots crunching beside David's. He didn't look at her right away, kept scanning the forest line. They're still out there, he said finally. Arilla nodded. Yes, they always come back. David turned toward her. We need to leave this place. They know where we are now. Where will we go? He looked down the mountain trail. There's a larger outpost about 2 days' walk from here, old human facility. It has better protection, communication equipment. Maybe even a way off this frozen planet. Arilla hesitated. Leave the mountains. It's the only way. She looked down at the snow. These mountains were the last place she had seen her people. The last place she held on to her old life. But now, that life was ashes. Only Elim mattered. Only safety mattered. She nodded. We go. They packed light, just food, water, spare clothes, and the child wrapped tightly in warm layers. David taught Arilla how to carry the emergency signal beacon and how to check their direction using the magnetic compass. She learned fast. She was no weak survivor. She was smart, strong, and willing to protect her son at all costs. As they walked, the sky darkened. A snowstorm was building again, faster than David expected. We need shelter, he muttered. Arilla pointed toward a rock formation. Cave? I see one. They rushed forward. The cave was small but dry. As David set up the heater and checked supplies, Arilla sat down with Elim in her arms. Then she froze. She heard something. Footsteps. Again, David caught it too. He looked up sharply. He didn't speak. He just moved swift and silent to the edge of the cave and drew his blaster. I'll go out, he whispered. Stay behind me. No, she said suddenly. Let me try something first. David blinked. What? She stood slowly and placed Elim on a blanket behind a rock. Then she stepped out of the cave into the snow. Her long silver hair blew in the wind. Her arms were empty, her face calm but cold. The figures appeared through the snow. 3 of them, her old tribe. One was her cousin Vashil. He used to bring her flowers as a child. Now he pointed a weapon at her. Arilla, he said, you made it hard for us. You left us to die, she replied. The child is dangerous. The child is innocent. Vashil stepped forward. You can come back, if you give him up. Arilla laughed bitterly. You asked me to kill my child, and call that mercy. It's not too late. She lifted her chin. You're wrong. Behind her, David stepped out of the cave slowly, blaster in hand. You really don't learn, do you? He said coldly. Vashil narrowed his eyes. Human. Step away. I warned you last time. You get one more chance. Vashil laughed.
They're
Outnumbered. David smirked. That didn't help you before. Then something happened that no one expected. Arilla stepped in front of David, and she raised her hands, but not in surrender. In power, the snow around her shifted. The wind began to swirl. Her eyes glowed faintly blue. David stared. What are you? She's a storm caller. Vashil whispered in fear. I never used it before, Arilla said calmly. I will now. The wind howled. The snow thickened. Arilla's voice rang through the storm. You came to hurt my child again. But this time, I'm not alone. This time, you face a mother with nothing left to lose. And a human who stands beside her. The attackers backed away. They were afraid they should be. David stepped beside her. Blaster aimed. Vashil looked at them both, then turned and disappeared into the storm with the others. The wind calmed. The snow settled. Arilla dropped her arms. Exhausted, David caught her before she fell. You okay? She nodded, breathing hard. Yes, just tired. He helped her back into the cave. They sat together, arms touching, outside. The world was cold and cruel. Inside, warmth and strength lived in the fire and in their hearts. The storm had passed again, but this time it wasn't like before. The wind was calm, the snow gentle. The sky was clearing above the mountains. A pale golden light began to rise in the distance. Morning, not just a new day, but a new life. Waiting, David stood at the mouth of the cave, scanning the land ahead. The valley stretched out before them like a silent promise. He could see the trail now faint, but clear. And beyond that, the signal tower of the old human outpost barely peeking through the trees. We're close, he said quietly. Behind him, Arilla sat cross-legged on the floor, her child sleeping peacefully in her lap. Her hair was tangled, her body bruised, but her spirit stronger than ever. She looked up. How far? Half a day. Maybe less. Arilla took a deep breath. Then we go. David helped her gather the packs. He lifted Elim gently into a sling, strapped against Arilla's chest, adjusting it to keep the baby warm. The child didn't even wake, just snuggled deeper into his mother's warmth as they stepped out of the cave together. Something felt different, lighter, stronger, not just survival anymore. Purpose. The walk was quiet, but not empty. Birds returned. To the trees, the sun, weak but present, warmed their skin. The forest, once dangerous, now felt like a path toward something real. David and Arilla didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Every glance, every step, every shared silence carried more weight than words. When they reached the edge of the outpost clearing, Arilla stopped. What is it? David asked. She stared at the building ahead, gray metal, tall towers with faded lights. It looked like an old relic from a forgotten time. It's just, I never thought I'd see anything like this again, she whispered. You're safe now, David said. Really safe. She looked up at him. Are you? He blinked. Me? She nodded. You've been alone for a long time, haven't you? David looked away for a moment, then smiled. A small, real smile. Not anymore. The door of the outpost creaked open as David entered the security code. Our lights flickered on, and the hallway hummed to life. Dust floated in the air, but everything still worked. He had been here once, long ago. A backup base. He never thought he'd use it again. Arilla stepped inside slowly, holding Elim close. This is your home? It was, David said. It can be again. She walked to a corner and gently laid Elim on a small padded bench. The baby stretched, yawned, fell back into peaceful sleep. David watched her as she knelt beside her son. She wasn't just a mother. She was a protector, a fighter, and now, a survivor. Over the next few hours, David repaired the heater, activated the food supply, and checked the emergency comms panel, still working. He turned to Irilla. "We can call for help now. Real help." Her face grew tense. "Help from whom?" "Human aid," he said. "People who can offer safety, maybe transport to a better colony." Irilla's eyes lowered. "Will they accept us?" David stepped forward. "I'll make sure they do. But what if they see my son and call him a freak, like my people did?" He paused, then knelt in front of her. "Then they'll have to go through me first." Her lips parted in surprise. No one had ever stood up for her like that. She leaned closer. "Why?" she whispered. David looked at her, truly looked. "Because from the moment I found you in that snow, something in me changed. I don't want to be alone anymore. And I don't want you to be, either." Irilla's throat tightened. She reached out and placed her hand over his. "I never wanted to be alone, either." That night, under a warm light, Irilla sang to her son again. But this time, it wasn't a final lullaby. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a beginning. David sat beside her, listening. He didn't know the words, but he felt every note. When she finished, she looked at him. "Do you think a human and an alien can build a life together?" He didn't answer with words. He just reached for her hand and didn't let go. Somewhere far away, others still fought wars, argued over borders, and feared what they didn't understand. But inside that old outpost, on a forgotten mountain, child slept, a mother healed, and a human found family in the coldest place of all, not because of duty, but because of choice. Because sometimes, it only takes one act of kindness to change everything forever.